entrepreneurs, are you trying to make bigger profits in your small business? Like many of us, I'm sure you're feeling it. Business is hard, and now more than ever, you need to have a plan to help your business not just survive, but thrive. And it can happen as simply with thinking with the end in mind. I'm Marcia. I'm a business growth strategist. I've helped tons of small business owners to establish and implement a tangible plan that guarantees increased profitability, guides your growth, and plans for a future exit. Because a business worth selling is also a business worth owning. And I'm happy to share strategies that I've earned and learned with you on today's Profit with a Plan podcast. But before we get started, I have something great to share with you. I've put together an insightful and think outside the box masterclass. This 15-minute training has been specifically designed to help you learn how to get your business sale ready, even if you aren't thinking of selling it. Why now? Join me and find all the benefits that come with having a sale-ready business. Register for free at scale2sell.biz. All right, I'm really excited to have my guest on with me. Stu Heinecke has been helping clients grow their business throughout his long and storied career. He started by introducing a new form of direct mail by personalizing cartoons. He was also one of Wall Street Journal's cartoonists. So he would draw the recipients into responding the subscription offers in record numbers. After breaking countless response records for clients such as Time, Forbes, Condé Nast, Wall Street Journal, SmithKline, Sham, Sandoz, the NBA and NHL, woohoo, that's my favorite, and more, he set his sights on getting the art of getting the meetings. And in his 2016 book on how to get a meeting with anyone became an instant classic, and he was named one of the top 64 sales books of all time. His latest book, which we're going to be talking about today, is How to Grow Your Business Like a Weed. And he introduces a fascinating new business growth model based on weeds of all things. And it's all fuel and strategy for growth. I love this. Stu believes that it doesn't matter what business you're in because we're all in the business growth business. So I love it. Stu, welcome to Profit with a Plan podcast.
Marcia, thank you for having me on. I'm so glad to join you.
Yeah, this is great. So I've been doing this a little while, and I have never heard someone relate growth to weeds. Tell me a little bit about what you mean. Are you talking the weeds that come out of the cement and the dirt?
I'm so glad you asked that because I'm not talking about this one.
Oh, thank goodness. Thank goodness.
And when I mentioned the weed mindset,
I'm in California, so it's legal here in California, but we're not talking about that way. I'm so glad you brought that up. Holy cow.
And when I talk about the weed mindset, I'm not talking about, yeah, man, it's none of that.
That's so funny. I didn't even correlate the two until you said that. And I'm like, oh, I should have had a precursor on this.
I'm having a blast talking about this book, I got to tell you.
It's perfect.
So, I am talking about the weeds that are growing in our yards and in our gardens, the ones on the roadways everywhere. All these plants that are invasive, the plants that we can't control, the plants that show up uninvited, the plants who have their own plans in mind, and the plants who, just expand and dominate and defend their turf. All those plants that we call weeds. Those are the ones I'm talking about. Wow.
Well, there's a lot of weeds out there, and they're very, you get one and they go like crazy. So how do we turn our business, I guess would be a great question, into thinking like it's a weed?
Well, so I should tell you how I got started with this, because I think that'll help. That'll put it in perspective. Sure. So I used to live in California too. I lived in LA, and one morning I was driving down the Santa Monica freeway. And so it's 6 lanes of traffic going one way and then 6 lanes coming the other way. And I think about a 40-foot wide concrete median. It's all concrete though, and rushing tires. And it's no place for a plant to take root. But I noticed something that, just is like, it's not an unusual sight at all, but I noticed a dandelion growing out of a crack in the concrete in the median.
Can we really get a picture of LA traffic though? You were not racing by the freeway to be able to see this dandelion. You were probably going 4 or 5 miles an hour with the kind of traffic
look at me, look at my hair. This is a long time. It was when traffic used to move. So no,
okay.
And it used to move actually. So we were going about 60, I would guess, something like that. So no, I was whizzing by then. It's a long time ago. So, but so I spotted this dandelion, and we know what they look like, and we've seen them growing out of cracks everywhere. So that wasn't so unusual. But this time, I don't know, for some reason, it really struck me because I was thinking, look at that thing. It just, how did it get there? And of course, we know how it got there. They have highly mobile seeds that float around in the air, and they probe every possible opportunity to take root, which is what we should be like in our business. And then it's significant, for example, that it wasn't there's no apple trees growing out of cracks in the concrete medians, or blueberry patches, or petunias. And quite frankly, those plants don't have what it takes to be a weed, actually, because weeds don't do anything. I would just say they don't do anything without an unfair advantage. And so isn't that cool? I mean, because we need to be much more weed-like in our businesses.
Yeah, we do. Okay, so finish your story, because I've got probably 6 or 7 questions on that coming up.
The other thing I noticed was that, look at it, it looked happy. It looked optimistic. It didn't look like it was saying, well, this sucks. I ended up in the middle of a freeway instead of at the beach. It just, wherever it landed, it stopped. I mean, it just took root and it ran its process. And it just looked like it was running that process very happily. And that process was obviously working for it. So there it was. And I just thought, man, I hope I can live up to that example throughout my career, throughout any business that I create.
Wow. Okay. You dropped some huge bombs on me through this story. First of all, the weed and the fact that you were driving fast was totally unreasonable in today's time, but especially on the Santa Monica freeway. But you talked about the strength that it was able to take root and grow, and despite the conditions that it was in. How do we relate that to our business?
Well, a couple of ways. One is, as I drove by, I thought, okay, I need to know, do weeds have a model? In fact, it started a long quest, and it's what led to writing the book. But do weeds have a model that they all use to grow? We know what it means to grow like a weed, but how are they doing it? And is there a model that we can use in business? Mm-hmm. And in fact, they all do have the same model. And it is a model that we can use. So what they're doing is they're leveraging a fierce mindset. We'll have to come back to that, but a fierce mindset and unfair advantages against collective scale. And they do it according to a process that has been honed over millions of years, but I'm able to really meet any challenge. They change quickly, but it's been honed over millions of years. So it's a darn good process. And it's just programmed into their DNA. So that's how they do it. And we know that we need to have a fierce mindset as well. That applies to our business and to really anything in life. We're not competitive if we don't have that. And then those unfair advantages, that's actually the WEEDS, that acronym, the WEEDS, so WEEDS, which stands for Weed-Inspired Enterprise Expansion and Domination Strategies. But it's 8 levels of strategy that you can use to create new unfair advantages, or maybe force multipliers in your business. And I don't think any business should exist without these. I don't think any business can exist without these unfair advantages. So you've got to cultivate those, and then they do it against collective scale. And so there's this whole section about scaling like a weed. And there's a lot. I'm having a blast talking about this, I have to say. It's a lot of fun.
Wow. Well, it's very creative how you came out of it and looking at this one weed on the freeway and coming up with this idea of how they're so resilient, they can adapt in any method, and then to be able to bridge the gap and bring us business owners and saying, because it is hard. If it was easy, everybody would be business owners making millions and millions of dollars. But there's a lot of us out there that aren't doing that. And we need to look at things that, as I like to say, outside the box or different viewpoint on our business, so that we can scale and grow. Because if you're not growing, you're dying, right? And the market's catching up and passing you and knocking you down.
Yeah.
So I love how you've created this bridge between the weed and the business and how we can do it. But you shared a lot of ideas and a lot of comments. Can we focus on one or two that maybe
Sure. Oh,
someone
yeah.
can use today and really start to feel that and then get some gain on there?
Yeah. Well, I mean, if I was going to say, well, okay, so tell me real quickly, how can I benefit from weed strategy? And I really wouldn't want to answer that quite, but I'd say no, read the whole book. But the first thing I think that we should do is we exist in one-to-one leverage, and I don't know if that makes sense yet, but we're taught from early childhood. Let's say the first time we played musical chairs, and with the music stopped, and we said, where's my chair? And you realize, oh, it's a competitive world out there, and I have to watch it. I have to be proactive, and if I don't want to be left standing when the music stops, I need to have an eye on all of the chairs, and I gotta be fast.
So you got to elbow the other kid out of the way too, right?
Yeah, you've got to be well. So it teaches us to be self-reliant. I mean, you've got to go to school, get good grades, and you get into a good college, then you go out and you get a good job. But you can't, but that's not scaling. You can't scale jobs. I mean, you can't have 1,000 jobs, let's say. So there's this really interesting dynamic happening here. We're taught to be self-reliant and tough at it. And entrepreneurs especially are good at this, right? I mean, they're sort of like at the top of the scale at this, and that's great. And it's necessary, but it also works against us because we all know all these, we probably recognize it in ourselves that there's a lot of things that we do that we shouldn't be doing. We should be having a team doing these things. There are things that we teach ourselves how to do things pretty easily as entrepreneurs. I mean, I think that's sort of the class of people that we are. And so if you teach yourself, like I taught myself to edit videos and so on, I'm not a good video editor. I shouldn't be doing it. I mean, I can do it, but if I really want to get a good job done, I do it. I get someone who's really an expert in it. You want to create these teams around you so that you don't become you shouldn't be part of the deliverable, or it should be minimum. I guess if you're a consultant, maybe that's not true, but otherwise, if you're part of the deliverable of a product, then you need to stop working at one-to-one leverage.
100%. You're the roadblock.
Yeah,
you're in the way.
You are the bottleneck. So I think one of the things that weeds show us so beautifully is, and it's part of their mindset, but it's also part of their strategy. It runs throughout, is that they work together, natural collaborators. They work together. And we need to learn to collaborate a lot more, I think. I think that's one of the big messages. And you can do that by forming all kinds of, there's a lot of ways to do this, but forming alliances, partnerships, gaining access to sales channels that you wouldn't have had otherwise, certainly wouldn't have been able to build on your own or would have had otherwise. You need to be doing these things so that you make what you're doing bigger. There's a synergy, but that synergy only happens if there are multiple people and there's multiple parties involved. So use buying strategy. I haven't explained what buying strategy is, but you want to borrow the infrastructure of others to gain dominant access to sunlight.
I love it.
And that's how you do it.
I love it. Very, very interesting, and something I've been very, very strong in preaching, the team approach and scaling. But, someone said you don't have to think market domination to grow. You don't have to grow and take over. Your goal or your mindset doesn't have to be Amazon, right? As an example of market domination. But even in a small business, you need more than one person, and you need the structure and pieces in place that you explain in your book. And you still need to be growing. It just doesn't have to be a market domination scale rate. It can still be at a pace that you can handle or you want to allow inside of your company. And that was only done by, as you mentioned, getting out of the bottleneck and building a team for it.
Yeah, collaboration is really the message there. You need to collaborate. And if you do, the more you collaborate, it's really interesting. The more you collaborate, the more everything grows. Look, I'm a small business owner. So I don't own anything like him. Nobody does own anything like Amazon, right? So Amazon is an extreme example, but they certainly do a lot of collaboration. Look at that. I mean, like the whole, it seems like the whole retail world is on their platform. They do a lot. I mean, and all the affiliates and all this stuff, they do a lot of collaboration, actually.
Really good point.
We can do it as well at our own scale. And I just, as I was writing the book, because I've been in business a long time, but I've had this creative agency. That's my business. I help sales teams break through, and I've got these campaigns, and we use cartoons, and there's all kinds of unfair advantages in that. I mean, I've got unmatched test experience, and I'm one of the Wall Street Journal cartoonists. It's going to be hard for people to match that if they're going to try to compete directly with what I do. So it's just a little niche, actually. I'm not trying to be Amazon, but I'm doing it very, very decisively. Protecting my turf. I'm protected in a lot of ways, and you still have to have, and it's necessary to have them, unfair advantages.
100%.
Right? I mean, does that make sense? Because
it
would be really hard to compete with me. I have a best-selling book on the subject of getting meetings, and the campaigns that I use now are to help sales teams get meetings, and so it's hard to compete with that.
So how does one create an unfair advantage like a weed in their business if they are, let's use an example of a CPA or an attorney, a high-end professional? What kind of unfair advantage could they build in a highly commoditized market?
Well, I think the first thing that they should build are relationships. And so those relationships, each one of those relationships can become an unfair advantage. I mean, I know a financial advisor. He was a client, and he had created this referral relationship with an attorney, and he ended up getting a $500,000 deal. I mean, like his commission was $500,000. So that relationship is definitely an unfair advantage. No one else got that commission.
And it's funny too, the deep relationships with partners, networking, building referral partners. I was just at an event on Saturday, and I wanted to introduce this new real estate attorney that I'd met in a circle, and I loved her. And I went to one of my real estate friends and I said, hey, would it be all right if I introduced you to Rebecca? And Wendy went to me and she's like, well, that's fine, but I don't want to give her any false hopes. I have a really solid relationship with Tony. And I'm like, oh, okay. And I knew Tony, and I didn't put two and two together, but that creates an unfair advantage for Tony because they have the tight relationship.
Yeah.
So,
No, I mean, but these unfair advantages can take all kinds of forms. It could be your location. It could be what the people that are streaming through because something else is nearby. It could be if you're brick and mortar. It could be partnerships that you cultivate. And so I'm starting a new annual award called the Total Weed Award. And I'm going to have a lot of fun calling somebody a total weed. Actually, I'm probably going to call you a total weed by the end of this. So that's a lot of fun.
I love it.
But so it's going to be an annual award to honor particularly weed-like growth and audacity in entrepreneurship. And so, I could just be making that award on my own, or I could find an interesting partner, and I did. So I'm partnering with the NASDAQ Entrepreneurial Center to make this award, right?
How cool is that?
Make it a much bigger thing? I saw your reaction. It made it a much bigger thing in your mind, right? So we create these. So that's an unfair advantage. They're all over the place. It's just.
And it's so funny. We use the term so often in our everyday life. It's like, oh, that weed is like troublesome. It won't go away, or it's taking over my grass. Or I like to call my grandson a weed because he grows really fast. But we use that terminology in so many different areas of our life. And to be able to use it on our business and look at our business and have it grow like a weed is really, that's a definite positive versus the negative of the thing that's taken over my grass, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think that what'll happen is, because the thing is, I've had more and more conversations as a new book, right? But I've had more and more conversations. And the funny thing is, afterward, I hear from people will write back to me and say, you'll never guess what the weeds are up to now in my garden or whatever. Suddenly they notice the weeds a lot more. And that's great, because I think that ultimately weeds are, what they're giving us is a model. It's not new innovation. It's a model that we can use to arrange our strategy. I mean, that's what it is. It's just, this is how we're going to arrange our business. This is how we're going to approach our market, or just approach being in business. And so it becomes, someone had said that weeds are nature's SWOT analysis. And I think that's right on the money.
That's great.
You'll watch weeds and you'll say, I got to make sure I'm doing this. Got to make sure. Oh yeah, look at how the weeds. Like later on this summer, we'll see the if you have dandelions around, you'll see that the dandelions keep growing while other things turn brown. They go into senescence. But the dandelions will go at least another month. On the island where I am near Seattle, they go at least a month longer. And you look at it and you go, and by the way, they also—
How could they do that? How do they do that? Is it just the tenacity? They have a plan to be stronger, multiply, have the unfair advantage.
They're willing to work hard. I think it's that they're willing to work harder than everyone else, because they are not only, like, again, in the springtime when all the plants start flowering, well, dandelions are among the first to start flowering. But all the other, I'm just looking out the window, so all these other plants and trees that flower, they do it once. And then they go to seed, and then that's it. They have one growth cycle through that summer, right through that growing period. But dandelions, you'll watch, and they keep doing it. They probably have 20 growth seasons.
Really?
20 growth cycles in a season. They just keep doing it. They keep flowering and they keep popping out seeds. And then, as I pointed out, they're doing it longer than all the other plants are going to sleep, I guess you could call it. They're in senescence.
Hibernation.
But a month later, they're still out there running their growth process as though it was spring. So they're working harder than everyone and longer than everyone else. That should give us inspiration in our businesses. We need to do the same thing.
I'm inspired by a dandelion to grow bigger, stronger, faster, better. That's amazing. But it is a completely different outlook on something we should already be doing in our business, whether we're small, a consulting firm like myself, or a brick and mortar dentist or little mom and pop shop, or it's, somebody who's thriving to grow and expand and grow and expand and grow and expand. We need to continue doing it. And so now you're thinking, instead of having a beautiful plant on my desk, I want to go get some weeds and pot them and see what they do.
I was noticing the weeds behind you.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that's great. It is a completely different outlook and viewpoint on something we need to do. So let's talk about, what are some of the areas that we should be focusing weed-like growth with? Maybe something in our business, like you had mentioned, having that network and collaboration. What would we want to look at maybe first if we're going to make our business like a weed?
Oh, I'm going to give you, well, this isn't really meant as a self-serving answer, but read the whole book.
Of course we're going to read the book, but these are teasers enough to get us all started on it.
But I think so a couple of things. One is weeds, if they could talk, I think that they would tell it. There's a whole weed mindset aspect to this as well. And one, the dandelion growing out of the crack in the Santa Monica freeway. Well, one of the things that it was doing is it was dealing with what is. It wasn't saying, oh shoot, but if I was at the beach, life would be this way, or
right, coulda, shoulda, woulda. If that could happen, love it.
Yeah, just deal with what is. It's really, it's one of those simple things to say to someone, deal with what is, but it's so hard to do. It's kind of like the stock advice, buy low, sell high. It sounds really easy, but in practice, it's really difficult to do, because when the market's going up, when the stocks are gaining in value, that's the last time you want. You don't want to sell them; they're going up higher, but they won't always. They won't. That won't continue completely, or certainly in the short term, there'll be downturns, and so that, and then buy low. You're buying when the market is really like tanked, and you're going,
and everybody's uncomfortable about it.
It's really hard to do. And so in our our case, dealing with what is, we have all these emotions that get in the way, and it just clouds everything we do, and it causes us to not act or not act as aggressively as we should. So deal with what is. And then the next one is just that I think that you do need to have, you got to have a weed mindset to do. You got to have this fierce mindset. You have to be optimistic and aggressive and resilient and adaptive and persistent. I mean, you have to have all those things, or you will not make it in business, because you're competing against a lot of people who do have those attributes, and you want to have them stronger than the other people that you're competing against, as well as having unfair advantages, and as well as working at collective scale, much larger scale than just one-to-one leverage. Do you want to be doing all those things? It's really it's a holistic thing. And finally, if I may, you said something in your intro about having a business that's worth selling. And so, I'm sure that the word process is very familiar because how many people have a business, but they don't have a process, a recorded process, a process that can be passed along, at least to the new owners, if not to all of their employees.
Well, it's part of scaling as well, is to have processes, because if you have everything in your head and you're swinging the hammer, you can't scale that. But if you say, swing it this way and this many times, then it's a process that can be handed off to somebody else.
And if you don't have a process, you don't even have a business you can sell.
That's right.
So, I mean, financial advisors will tell, financial advisors run into people all the time who say, yeah, I've got a business, and their hair is probably about the same color as mine. So they're saying, okay, so, I'm getting ready to, have a liquidity event. I'm going to sell. And I think what I might do is move to Switzerland or Barbados or something on my yacht. And then they come to this rude awakening that the financial advisor will say, do you have a process? Like, no, I don't have a process. Well, essentially, they tell them what you have is a great job. You produce the best possible fitting job for yourself, but you didn't build a business. So 100%. Process is critical for that.
Love it. It is so true. People think about, I bump into this frequently because I deal a lot with professional service firms, and I deal with it frequently because they're like, I'll speak to a bankruptcy attorney, and he's like, oh yeah, that I'm the business. And I'm like, yeah, you are the business, but that doesn't mean you have to stay the business. And you could expand and grow out of this. These are important things and mindsets to shift. So I'm always asking my clients to start thinking with the end in mind, because growing a great business that can be sold makes a fantastic business right now. Yeah. But it's the same with that weed mindset. If you can get them to shift the way they're thinking and thinking, how can I be resilient? How can I be tenacious? How can I be super strong and grow the month or two after the season and get started before anybody else? I mean, that's business. That's how you jump ahead. And you just put it in a format that gets someone thinking differently about something that they should be doing with no complaints, and just start busting it through, right?
Yeah, I think so. And so it gets, again, it's about working harder and smarter. And it's about creating, well, I keep saying unfair advantages, but really force multipliers, right? I mean, I like that. You need those things in your business, or you don't have a reason for being in business. So you need them, and you need to add more. You need to cultivate more and more and more of those, which is what that weeds model is about. Those 8 levels of strategy are about. And you need to think about scaling your business consciously. You can't, if you don't think about it, it won't scale. You have to create that scale by creating those alliances and those collaborations. And then again, I really have to hit hard on process. Process. I'm a cartoonist. I'm a creative guy. So process was always
processes are opposite, right?
They are opposite. But I was always thinking, when I heard the word process, I thought, it feels like a speed bump. It feels like, this sort of just this bureaucratic thing. You got to read manuals and you got to follow. Well, it's not about not following rules, but I got to read all these. I'd rather figure it out myself. It's kind of the way I was thinking, right? But weeds have changed everything for me about process, because I see that they have this process that is honed over millions of years, but it's also adaptable to anything that comes up. And they'll do things like, there's one weed that has created an immunity to Roundup and 70% of all other herbicides used by farmers. And it did it in 4 years. And that's because it had a process for evolving right around any challenge like that. So now that's incorporated into its process. It's just, process is evolution in the weeds world. And it probably is in our world as well.
Love it. Stu, you've given us some fantastic ideas and ways to view those nasty little buggers and put it into our business in a way that we can grow, which is the essence of life and business. I love it. Now, we've talked about your book several times. You've given us some great insights to your book. Where can listeners find out more about you and your book so they can grow their business?
I don't know if I showed. So here it is.
Cool. Love it.
How to grow your business like a weed. And you can buy it anywhere. Anywhere books are sold, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, et cetera. But you can also come to my website. And if you come to my author site, you can get the first 2 chapters for free, and you can join my list. And I would love to have you do that. And we could talk weeds a lot more. I love talking weeds, but really it's about what I really love to do. And it's been my whole career has always been about creating unfair advantages for clients. And the weed strategy is going to do that for you as well. So I'd love to have you stop by my site. It's just stuheinecke.com, StuHeinecke.com. And hopefully maybe there'll be a link with this and stuff.
Absolutely.
Just
Absolutely.
Go right
we'll help the folks spell it, and it'll be on the podcast notes as well.
Perfect.
So.
Perfect.
Well, I love
so just go over there
and
you can get the a couple of free chapters.
Love it. I can't wait to see, and I'm looking forward to the Weed Award and putting it out there, because I want to grow some weeds myself in my business and start changing that mindset. I think it's a really smart method for growing your business. So thanks so much. Hey, listeners, I hope you found a couple of ideas to put into your business that will help you be more profitable, and to think outside the box and just really start thinking like a weed, right? Your business needs to be that, almost even you can think weed marketing, right? You can layer the weed mindset on everything you do. I think it's a really fun idea. All right. So now more than ever, it's important to build your business like you want to sell it. Don't forget to register for my new free 15-minute training on how to get your business sale ready, even if you aren't thinking of selling it yet. There are tons of benefits to having a sale-ready business, like more freedom, more money, and an easier to run business. Go register for free at sell.biz. You don't want to miss this class. And Stu and I would love to hear your questions, how you're using the weed mentality in your business, and share it with us. Comment on today's show and put it in there. Stu and I will respond back with your comments and questions. And don't forget to subscribe. You don't want to miss any future shows. And you can always catch Profit with a Plan on any of your favorite podcast players. And we're looking forward to more great profitable information on next week's show. So until then, make your plans and profit with them. Thanks so much, Stu.
Thank you, Marcia.